Hey Cachers, Derek here, Big Six Clan. Today I get to meet up with another cache owner that has a really creative cache. You don't want to miss this. Okay, so I got to meet up with CacheDweeb, who has probably one of the coolest and largest smart caches that I have seen. And I got to meet up with him on StreamYard, and here is that conversation. All right, so I'm with Steve. Steve, this cache that you're gonna tell us about today, I've been so excited. I've seen when you're going through the building process of this and everything, and I was so excited to see this. The only problem is I hate that I'm so far away from where you actually are, because I would love to go find this cache. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about this cache, this phenomenal cache that you built.
Sure. So probably about 200 to 300 hours went into the making of this cache. And it took me about 6 months to do all the coding and to actually acquire a phone booth, because they're pretty hard to come by these days. So the place where I put it was actually on my own property, and that's probably the hardest part about hiding a cache that size, is getting a property that will allow you to not only put it on there, but will also have electricity for you to use to power the cache as well.
Yeah, because that was one of the questions I was going to ask, is it is an actual phone booth, not the little ones that just has the phone on it that you might see at a rest area or something like that, but actually a Superman phone booth.
Yeah, it's an actual phone booth. I actually drove 12 hours to get it, and it was pretty hard to convince my wife to go with me, because where the phone booth was located was probably about an hour and a half away from my son, who was at college in Ohio. So we made the trip. I want to say it was in March of last year. And at one point, we were in the middle of a snowstorm after we had picked it up, going back to our hotel, and I had said to her, do you know that we're probably the only people in the United States right now driving around with a phone booth in the back of our truck?
That's hilarious. Now, how did you even come up with the concept of this whole phone booth cache idea?
Well, I actually had another payphone cache called Number Please. And Number Please was my first attempt at a payphone cache. I came up with the idea with, one day I was just thinking about it. I was talking with my brother, and I said, hey, what would be pretty cool is if you're walking a mile in the woods and you come up and there's a payphone there. I just thought that would be like the best thing ever. I ended up buying a payphone, and I couldn't get into it. And they're actually pretty hard to get into if you don't have keys, and you pretty well much, if you're lucky enough to break the lock and not break the casing, that's good. But most of the time you have to actually break the casing in order to get in. So I wanted to use the vault of the payphone. So I built one out of wood, and I ended up using the vault part to hold trackables and things like that, and I made it like into a drawer. And I wanted the payphone to call you back. I wanted you to be able to say things and all that, and I had some great ideas. I just didn't know how to make them happen. And my brother said, well, that would be pretty cool if you bought one of those birthday cards that you could actually record messages in. So I was like, oh yeah, that is a great idea. So I went online, I started, researching some stuff. I found these little sound modules that hold about, I don't know, is like maybe 3 or 4 minutes worth of audio that you can put on there. And I couldn't really use the keypad for the payphone, so I put some buttons that start the audio behind the buttons of the actual payphone I had. So part of it was an actual payphone, but most of it was all wooden to look like an actual payphone. That was out in the woods for about 2.5 years before Mother Nature just destroyed the casing that was around it. Before that happened though, I wanted to actually, do everything I wanted to do with the first payphone. And that's when I started learning about Arduino and everything it could do. And I was a developer in a previous life. So I knew some coding, but unfortunately I didn't know anything about Arduino and the C# coding. But it wasn't that long for me to pick up.
That's great. I mean, it's seeing the pictures of this phone booth as you're seeing on the screen right now. It is just absolutely phenomenal, and I love the cache page, because there's some things on the cache page that you have to do So remember, you need to read the description, because if you don't read the description, more than likely you're not going to be able to figure out what you're going to have to do with this cache. Is that correct?
That's correct. Unlike my first one, this is an actual payphone. It does everything that payphones do. You can dial, with the exception of dialing out, but you can dial phone numbers. You get phone calls in. Everything on there acts like an actual payphone.
That's really cool, because what I thought was interesting was how to get into it. I guess there's when you're looking at the cache itself, you have to do a lot of different things with different numbers that you're seeing on there. And I love a lot of the old 80s and early 90s references in there. I think that's just really great.
Yeah, so there's over 500 phone numbers that you can call. And
wow.
that's the whole basis of the cache, is to just call phone numbers. And I had to make it so it didn't matter if you were, 16 years old or 86 years old. I needed to have something in there that anybody would recognize. So there's newer stuff in there. There's older stuff that, our parents would recognize. So it's all in there. So there's definitely something for everybody in there. And it's just all fun stuff.
That's really great. What are some of the logs that you've gotten that are like some of the ones that really stick out that you've gotten on this cache?
They're just really amazed. They love that it's iconic. They love, they haven't seen a payphone in such a long time, because they're just not around anymore. And I drew a lot of artwork on the payphone as well, and they absolutely love the graffiti that's on there, and they just all the references to old movies and old sayings and stuff. They just love it.
Wow, Steve, this is just fantastic. All those hours of putting into it is just amazing, because I don't think a lot of people, when they're putting out caches or going to find caches, especially the new ones, know how much work actually goes into making a really great cache. And I just really thank you for that. And that's just awesome.
Thanks. And that's the big thing about making these things, is reading the logs. When people go and find Tupperware in the woods, they usually put a TFTC or something small, but on a majority of the people on my gadget caches, they're leaving some really good logs, about their whole journey, about how they got through it. It's pretty cool.
Well, once again, I just want to thank you for pushing the limits of cachers and inspiring so many cache builders to be able to do so many different things with caches and creating gadgets and just doing that. So I just really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Derek.
So that is just one of the coolest caches that is definitely on my geocache bucket list. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. Let me know, have you found that cache? And what is the coolest smart cache you've ever found? Hey, leave me a comment down below and let me know. All right, don't go anywhere. Check out another one of these stories just right over here and check out the story behind the cache.
Releasing the cache in 3, 2, 1. Boom. And there it is.